Hello, and welcome to the Trailblazers podcast, where we chat with women who are trailblazing in business in their own unique ways, their journeys, and their missions. I'm your host, Isha Solanki, and my guest today is a true innovator who turned an awkward dinner party moment where she had to discreetly dispose of a used tampon without a proper bin into a global mission for sustainability and social change, inventing a discreet, eco-friendly disposal solution for period products to combat environmental pollution and break down social stigma. But Martha didn't stop there. She launched a period supportive movement in 2023, rallying over 15 national sports bodies to ensure periods are no barrier to participation. And I'm delighted to welcome the founder and inventor of Fab Little Bag, Martha Silcott. I would love to know, or if you could take us back to that dinner party moment when the idea for Fab Little Bag was born. And I'm most interested because I bet everyone in the world has gone through this one. I know I have.
Well, I wish they hadn't, and I'm hoping that they won't have to in the future. So it was all going so swimmingly. And then, that moment that you think, oh, I just need to go and change, like tampon pad, whatever, you just know. So I excused myself from the table, went to the downstairs loo, and I was a binner. So I did the loo roll wrap and went to put my tampon in the bin. But there was no bin in the downstairs loo. So I kind of had this 10 seconds of panic. Like, do I risk flushing it? What am I actually going to do with it? Where's the kitchen? Where is the bin? All that kind of thing. So I ended up deciding to do some extra wrapping, and I did the sleeve smuggle and went back to the table where my handbag was on the back of my chair and kind of surreptitiously smuggled it into my handbag. But it felt weird and wrong, definitely awkward. And I was convinced someone was going to say, oh, Martha, what are you doing? That kind of thing.
And call you out, which is even more embarrassing.
Call me out, whatever. And then I was thinking, oh God, can someone smell it? And I can't smell it because you can't smell yourself. And like, what's going on in my handbag? And it was just a really awkward and irritating and horrible experience. So that was the kind of catalyst. I didn't know it at the time, but that was the catalyst which then led to the invention of Fab Little Bag later on. Because when I stormed into Boots the next day to find a solution to this challenge that I'd been put through, there was none. And there wasn't. This was before they were even selling kind of dog poo bags marketed as sanitary disposal bags, which they do now. But there was just no mention of disposal. It was like this whole aisle of what was then called feminine hygiene aisle. Thankfully, it's now in most places called period care, menstrual care, whatever. So that's progress. But back then, there was just this huge aisle of product, and it was like they all magically disappeared somewhere because there was no mention of disposal, barely a mention on the outer packaging. I think some of the boxes, if you lifted them up on the very bottom of the box where, very dull, boring information was, there was a tiny picture of a toilet with a cross. That was the extent of the education and the extent of the communication about flushing or binning.
And actually, what you're doing is so important, not just for now, but for future generations. I know that my daughter in particular, she does struggle when she goes out and she'll come back and she'll like, well, what do I use? And it's interesting you say aisle of products. I went down the nappy bag aisle because I was like, what is this poor girl going to put anything in when she goes to school or wherever she may be?
Yeah, schools can be challenging actually, because the reality is you've got quite a high footfall in a school toilet. Teenage girls, not the most tidy or considerate, frankly. So putting it mildly. So the kind of toilet situation at schools can be very grim indeed. And a number of parents have communicated to me the huge change that having Fab Little Bag for their daughter has made in that environment in particular. Just giving them more confidence that they don't have to hold on till they get home. They can go and change their pad or tampon in the toilet and not engage with that bin because it is so revolting. So things like that, yeah, they definitely change. And going back to that point about that age, I mean, that's where we have to have the discussion about disposal. What do you do? With 40% of women habitually flushing period products down the toilet, it's an insane amount of mainly plastic related product going into our aquatic systems, into our sewage systems, into our rivers. Rivers lead to oceans. Some of it gets washed up on beaches. So all of that flushing has impact. But it's such a taboo subject that when you're 10, 11, 12 and you start your period, whoever's there, your mum, your sister, your teacher, your friend, whenever they say to you in that moment, oh, just flush it down the toilet, it's fine, that's what you're meant to do, or never flush it down the toilet, always wrap it up and put it in the bin. Suddenly a flusher and a binner have been born, and that's pretty much what they do for the rest of their life until they discover an education about it. And the world of flushers and binners is very funny because they both coexist, but they don't realize each other exists because everyone thinks and assumes that everyone does what they do.
Oh, absolutely. Totally agree.
Yeah.
So much about you do that. Why would you do that? That just cogs everything up. But that's going from my own operating system, like you said.
Exactly. And I would encourage all of your listeners to engage in a conversation, to ask their friends, get their friendship group, are you a flusher or a binner? Because there will definitely be a mix in there somewhere and it will shock each other. And just talking about it is part of our mission as well, which is to break down the taboo around periods and normalize that conversation, because periods are normal and they're a very important part of life. In fact, no one would be here without periods existing. So let's make it normal. Let's make talking about it a relaxed, non-awkward conversation.
And it's interesting you say that. So I come from an Indian background where periods are really very taboo. You don't talk about them anywhere. You don't go out. I mean, you just don't have one, right? Even though factually we all have one. And so I appreciate the comment that you said that we have to start talking, because I totally agree with you. I'm really open with my daughter and actually my son. Like, it's a normal part of being a woman. And like you said, none of us would be here without it, right? And that's an important opener to ensure that it's normal in our day-to-day. And we get to talk about it, what's regular, what's not regular, and all those types of things. How has your experience or you hearing about these stories shaped your vision for Fab Little Bag? And actually, I would love for you to tell us what Fab Little Bag is and how it works too.
Okay, well, maybe it's easier to start there and then move on, actually. So Fab Little Bag is a sustainably sourced disposal bag for tampons and pads. Also works really well for condoms, actually. It opens with one hand, it's completely opaque, and it's sealed closed. So when you put your pad or tampon in, you then pull off the strip and it closes and it's completely sealed. So then you have a sealed package that no one can see inside. The blood red isn't visible. You can fit easily the tampon, pad or applicator and all the paraphernalia around it. They all fit in here. It looks too small, but it's so small. It looks like, oh, what are you going to fit in there? But actually, if I just show you here it's just a normal pad. It's not a big pad. It's not a small pad. It's just a normal pad. You'd roll that up normally and then wrap it in loads and loads of toilet roll and put it in the bin. Right. So instead of wrapping it in wasting all that toilet roll for no good reason, you'd wrap it up and then you'd put maybe one piece of toilet roll or the wrapper from the next pad you're about to use, wrap it in that to cover the sticky bit. Then when you put it in, so it looks really small. Look how much space there is there.
Honestly, I'm surprised you fitted it in, because I would never dream about taking a bag that size out to put a sanitary towel in.
I know, right? So you just roll it as normal and then it fits with oodles of space in there. And then you pull off the strip, seal it, and then you've got your sealed package. And the beauty about that is if there is a bin, you then obviously put it in the bin. And that, because it's sealed, because it's contained, it's keeping the bin contamination free and it's keeping the bin odor free. And it means you can fit a lot more of used period products in the bin than you could if you were wrapping it in all the toilet roll that you would normally do. So it's a bin's best buddy, basically, because it helps the bin be a better bin. And then if there isn't a bin, then you can, because it's completely sealed, you can put it in your pocket, you can put it in your handbag, you can put it in your rucksack, put it down your sock. You can deal with it yourself on your own terms and take it away and put it in any bin, depending on where you are. So it's about that encouragement. If I could touch on the flushers again. So the flushers, once you explain to them about the damage that their habit is causing the environment in terms of the pollution of period waste in rivers, oceans, beaches, they're usually absolutely horrified about this, because they genuinely, we call them gobsmacked flushers. They're not flushing to be a bad person or to cause pollution. They're flushing because that's what they were told to do when they were 12 and they haven't had that conversation. So they're horrified when they realize the damage that they're doing. But their next question is, so what am I meant to do? And then when you explain to them, well, you're meant to get your tampon or your pad and then wrap it in loads of toilet roll and put it in the bin. If there is no bin, then maybe wrap it up a bit more and put it up your sleeve or put it in a handbag or like smuggle it out. And they're just like, "Bleh, that is disgusting." And it's so funny because it's only when a binner spells it out loud that you think, actually, that is a bit grim.
Yes, I'm saying the same thing. Wow, that's really grim the way you just...
Yeah, you've been doing it. You've been doing it all your life, pretty much without thinking about it too much, because women just get on and do stuff. If it needs to be done, just get on and do it. But then when you spell it out, you realize, oh God, yeah, that is a bit grim. So their reaction is, ew, no thanks. And then when you say, oh,
I totally get now, by the way. So thank you for showing me the other side of this. I totally get it now.
So then they're like, or you can use a Fab Little Bag. So you just plop it in, pull off the seal, all gone away, all sealed up, can't see anything, you're in control. And that is so much more attractive to a flusher than telling them and educating them about the loo roll wrap, which frankly isn't attractive.
I totally get you on that one. See, you made an important point just now about the environmental problem of flushing products and how those of us who flush don't really understand what that impact is. How significant is the environmental problem of flushing period products?
Well, every day, the stat that is out there is that every day in the UK, 2.5 million tampons and 1.4 million pads are flushed in the UK alone. Every day. Every day. That's a lot of product. Now, there's a number of things. Our pipe that goes from our toilet to our sewers is typically 10 centimeters. It's like this big. That is not very big. And when you add in hard water issues and pipe thawing and things like that, and the fact it goes around corners, you can see how easy it is for things to start to get stuck inside the pipes. If you ask any plumber, what is the number one cause of you getting a phone call to a domestic property, they'll say wipes and tampons and pads. So it's a problem from that perspective. But the environmental, that's the kind of practical problem in terms of blockages. And believe me, you do not want to get a blockage in your bathroom because that's raw sewage coming straight up into your house. But the environmental problem is further down the cycle. So it goes into the sewer. The sewers are designed in this country to overflow into rivers to help control flooding. And then, frankly, recently we've had water companies just being very irresponsible and opening up sluice gates and letting raw sewage go into rivers and oceans, millions and millions of gallons at a time. So this is how product gets out into those environmental areas. I think it was 2018, the European Commission, so they need to do another one, but the European Commission did some research that said that sanitary waste was the 5th largest contributor of single-use plastic in the sea. That's huge. Okay. So that's a variety of sanitary waste, but like still, that's really, really large. And if you look at beach cleanups stats from Surfers Against Sewage or Marine Conservation Society, there's always X amount of product picked up per meter on every single beach clean, no matter where you are in the country. So it's a significant problem, largely due to the volume that is being flushed and also the fact that no one is, even the water companies doing their very best, would struggle to get every single thing that was flushed out before it could reach the rivers and oceans, even if they were doing their jobs properly. So the environmental thing is very real.
Martha, what shaped your vision for Fab Little Bag?
I think ultimately it did stem from how I actually felt being put in that position of having to do handbag smuggles in other people's homes, and how it made me feel about my period when I didn't feel like that was what I should be feeling about trying to manage something I couldn't help.
Stressful as well. It's a stressful situation to be.
Yeah. And I was a grown up and I got over it and it was all kind of fine. But then thinking about how that would affect either less confident people or more awkward situations or girls when they're already struggling with coming to terms with their period, and also in the teenage years, everything's awkward and embarrassing and whatever. So having to like lay that on them as well, I didn't want that to be a thing. I wanted there to be an answer, a solution, an easy solution for managing disposal of something that in other people's minds was awkward or taboo or difficult. So I guess that shaped a vision. And then I learned about the environmental side and wanted to do something about that. And then they collided and realized that actually you'd solve two problems with one bag effectively if you can get the communication right. So it is still a taboo subject in 2025, which is insane, but it's less taboo now than it was 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago. So it's headed in a much more healthy direction. And I think the youngsters today are much more open about periods and talking about it than my generation, your generation were. There's still massive cultural challenges where taboo is just all encompassing. So there's a long way to go. But that said, I think progress has been made. And yeah, so I think in a nutshell, my vision was empowerment. That's if I could choose one word, it would be empowerment.
I love that. In 2023, you launched, was it the Period Supportive Movement?
Yeah.
What motivated this initiative? And I'd love to know what impact it has had so far.
Oh my gosh, I was so excited about this. And it just happened organically in as much as I was doing some research into sports for a big national organization that I was writing a paper for. And as part of that, this is in 2022, all this research had come out by Sports England and stuff about how teenage girls were leaving sport in their droves. And of course, there are multiple layers of complex reasons why that is. I mean, teenagers we've touched on it already. They're challenging, they're contrary, they're full of hormones, they're full of all kinds of things. So there's not one thing that makes all teenage girls leave sport. There are layers, but a very significant part of that puzzle and part of that contribution of the exodus was periods and managing, or rather not being able to manage periods whilst playing sport. And whilst this focused a lot on grassroots level, actually, when you look into it, it went all the way up to elite level. So I was like, wow, this is crazy. And then when I was looking at like the things that were being quoted by sportswomen, you get caught short and there's just no tampons or pads around anywhere. It's not always easy to ask for one. The coaches are predominantly male coaches. It's awkward. It's uncomfortable. There's no female toilets at all. Or you've got to go into the boys' ones and hope no one comes in. There's no locks on the door. There are female toilets. There's no bin. There's never any bin. You're lucky if you've got some toilet roll in there. Like the kind of practicalities were terrible. So I was like, okay, that I can fix. I can solve that problem, that little bit of the problem, if you like, by ensuring that wherever you are playing sport, wherever you are, regardless of whether it's some big fancy tennis club with lots of lovely toilets and a bin, or you're in the middle of Hackney Marshes, a long way from any toilet, or there is one, but it's over there and the door doesn't close. Wherever you are, you'll be able to get a tampon or a pad if you need one, and you'll be able to dispose and change that product if you need to. Fundamental, normal, basic stuff. And so, yeah, we created the coach's bag.
Oh, I love it.
Going back to the fact that most coaches are male, I needed to design something that was very comfortable for men to pick up, hold, declare its existence, and feel as comfortable as they can, allowing them really to be part of the educational solution, to be part of the overall solution of keeping women and girls playing sports. So our mantra behind our period supportive movement is simply that periods must not be a barrier to participation in sport. They are, but we're changing that. So the period supportive movement, if you were a club where you didn't have a clubhouse, like a lot of football clubs, grassroots, then this coach's bag, it's almost like the first aid bag, but for periods.
Yeah, okay.
It's that simple.
It's a great way of putting it.
Tampons and pads and Fab Little Bags in there. And this will always be there. So you can grab the bag, help yourself. Incidentally, one thing we haven't yet touched on, period poverty. It was Plan International that did some research, again, I think 2019, around period poverty. And they found that 1 in 10 girls were suffering with period poverty, not being able to afford their own period products, using socks to go to school instead of pads, missing school. So this also addresses that issue because you can just help yourself to product, whether you're on your period at that moment or not. No one is going to know. There's no judgment going on. So it also helps to address that, which is really important. So the coach's bag. And then for clubs that do have clubhouses, because cricket has clubhouses, rugby has clubhouses, and tennis tends to have clubhouses, then they have like a starter pack for their clubs, and our dispenser goes in the cubicles, which gives the education about flushing on it. And then we just pull out a bag, use that, put it in the bin. And this creates a really positive message from the club to the players, to the supporters, to the parents. We've thought about this. We care about the environment. We care about you as women and girls, and we've done something positive about it. And also respect our rivers, respect our oceans. So it was practical product, but this is so much more than a bag full of products. It becomes, and this is where the period supportive movement comes in, it becomes a declaration, a leveling, a kind of new standard of creating welcoming environments for women and girls. So it's really about the vision of periods never being a barrier. There might be other barriers that affect participation, but let's not make this one of them when it's so easily solved by simple practical provision. Yes, it's a bag full of practical product, but it's so much more than that. It's a standard, it's a declaration, it's a leveling up. We don't expect men to wander around with their own toilet roll just in case they might need a poo that day, do we? But we do expect women to wander around with everything that they might possibly need to manage their periods at all times. So toilet roll is there for bodily functions. Tampons and pads are there for bodily functions. Just leveling things up a bit here. So and the period supportive movement has been amazing. And wrapped around all of it, just like wrapped around what Fab Little Bag is all about, is this really important aspect of breaking down taboos, talking about it openly, providing education to coaches, to parents, to club members, and normalizing periods. So this is the ripple effect of a bag full of product.
Which is basics as well, which are basic, a bag full of products, which is basics for, most women, is what I would say.
Exactly, right? So you said 15 on your intro. We've now got, I need Rachel, she'd tell me the exact number, but it's over 30 national bodies that are now declared members of the period supportive movement, meaning that they invest in the coaches' bags. They've facilitated coaches having coaches' bags. When they have events, they declare the event a period supportive event. They have the bags on display and things like that. And if they have got clubhouses, they put the dispensers in their toilets and posters on the back of the door to educate around periods and around disposal. So it's absolutely, honestly, so fantastic. And the thing that gives me goosebumps about it is the feedback that we get from the girls and the women at the clubs. And can I also give a shout out for the men involved, because they are really an important part of this conversation, really important part. And most of them are just fantastic allies. Yes, there are some dinosaurs out there who are like not listening and head in sand. They are hopefully soon to be tanned or a dying breed, whichever you want to think about it. But there's a lot of men out there who, once they get over that initial awkwardness of talking to me or declaring their coach's bag's existence, they feel empowered, they feel educated, they feel more comfortable talking about this. And the more people that feel more comfortable, the better it all is.
What's been your most memorable feedback that you've received and it's really stuck with you and you thought that was worth it? Or funniest even?
You know what? There's obviously a lot, but a couple that spring to mind. One is a mum who contacted me and said, "You've really changed my daughter's life, in as much as when she goes to stay with her dad, because they'd split up, she used to come back with a Sainsbury's bag full of every pad she'd used that weekend when it was a period weekend, because she felt uncomfortable, like didn't know quite where to put it. I think he did have a bin, but it was only in the bathroom, not in the downstairs loo, and it was no lid or whatever. But since your Fab Little Bags, she now feels, because they disappear in the bin, because there's nothing on one side and they're like that on just the branding on the other. And most things are white in the bin. So it disappears in the bin, and because it's sealed and there's no smell and everything, she just disposes of them in the bin because she feels comfortable and not awkward and not embarrassed, even though of course she shouldn't be. she was feeling all of those things. So to have positively empowered a teenager to feel more comfortable in a parent's house, that felt really great. And then one that is a bit more comical was a woman said to me how Fab Little Bag had saved her on a golf course because she was in the middle of the course, like hole 9 or 10 or whatever. I think there's 18, right? So there's 18 holes in a proper golf course. And the clubhouse is at the 18th hole. So she's like far away. And she said that
this.
she's in the middle, right?
Yeah.
So she said, again, not to get too graphic, but sometimes you feel a bit of a gush. And she said, oh, I really got this kind of gush feel and I really needed to change. I was literally in the middle of a golf course. So she had her Fab Little Bags with her and she went behind a tree and changed her tampon with the Fab Little Bag
woman for doing it
behind a tree because she could. And it was the only way that she could have managed that situation without massively leaking through and having to talk about a walk of shame.
Like, that's what I was thinking in my head.
So many, I don't know how big golf courses are, but it's a long way for the walk, right? So she was absolutely like, I'm saying prayers to the God of Fab Little Bag because I just can't even begin to imagine what it would have been like had I not been able to make that change there and then. So it's awful, but it's great and it's funny.
It's funny. And all of those things, like you've told it so well and like imagine me the whole thing. I'm like, oh no. But then sometimes the walk to the toilet can be too long. So
100%. Yeah, definitely.
What obstacles have you encountered as a female entrepreneur in this space and how have you overcome them? Because you're in a difficult space. There's stigma associated with what you're trying to achieve is what I would say. And you have to break down so many barriers while you're there.
Yeah, I mean, it continues to be tough. I mean, at the very beginning, it was ridiculous because I genuinely had no clue what I was doing and no clue about most of the things you should have a clue about when you're setting up a business. But like most entrepreneurs who didn't really set out to be an entrepreneur and found themselves in that situation, you just wing it a bit and do the best you can and ask as many favors as possible from as many great people along the way. The challenges were significant because of the topic and the fact that no one talked about it. So it was a new product in a new category in a taboo subject at a time when periods were not fashionable and no one was talking about it. And that made the first 3 years incredibly difficult. We did get some traction, but it was really hard. And to be fair, I think that there's 2 negatives which changed that for the better, which was the tampon tax and the period poverty exposure. So both of those negative things ended up allowing periods as a topic to just explode. And that's when you suddenly saw organic brands of tampon and pads mushrooming out of everywhere. It went from one that had been around for ages to 15 different brands almost in 6 to 9 months. It was wild. And then you had reusable pads and the menstrual cup had a total kind of was reborn. And suddenly now you've got 10 different brands of menstrual cup, which is amazing. And then you've got period underwear, which is revolutionized things. So it just erupted and it was, I can't remember, I was just so joyful that a topic I'd been talking about for ages with like just echoes and nothing coming back. Suddenly it was just like, let's do this and do that. And let's talk about this and talk about that. So it was just fantastic. And all of those things have been hugely positive. And then what's happened in the last kind of 18 months to 2 years is that it's crossed over from just being something consumer to being business. So now it's getting more and more common, which is so exciting.
Well, I can't wait to see a dispenser where
they're out there. They're out in various different places, but it's now very common in a certain category anyway of workplaces to have free period products there all the time. Even in like Premiership football clubs and non-Premiership football clubs, for example, they now nearly all provide free period products in the ladies' loos. I mean, that was unheard of 2 years ago. As I say, huge positive changes are being made. It's still too slow for my liking, but got to be grateful it's happening. And also, to be fair, you asked about challenges. One of my biggest challenges, which continues to be a huge challenge today, is that certainly on B2B, business to business, I'm talking to facilities managers. Yeah. Facilities managers are predominantly male, middle-aged guys. They don't have any empathy relating to what I'm talking about. And all of them think that we don't have a disposal problem. We provide bins in our cubicles. And to have to then educate that actually only half the people that enter that cubicle are even going to look at that bin, because they'll be flushing their stuff down the toilets. They're not even engaging in any way with the bin. And then the other half are engaging with the bin. And sometimes the bin is great. And sometimes the bin doesn't work. The pedal doesn't open the lid. The batteries have run out. The lid's
overflowing, or it's dirty, or it's smart. The list is really quite endless if I was...
Exactly right. So on the one hand, there's some challenges with the bin. And on the other hand, the people not using the bin. So if you actually want to look at how effective the bin is in and of itself, it's not that effective. So we need to educate that, yes, you need to have the bin, but you need Fab Little Bags in there to educate the flushers to use the bin and to help keep that bin the best bin it can be in terms of hygiene and all of that. And if it isn't working, don't then make a binner have to flush. Allow them still be able to bin and take it outside and put it in the bin outside. That's still really hard because it's also an additional cost to them that they haven't ever had to pay before. So as a procurement mindset, it's like, oh, well, no one's complaining. Oh, that's the other thing. No one complains about it.
No one's ever going to complain about something like that. Come on.
You have to come with me on my sales meetings, because this is what I say. Like I said, really, you think people are going to rock up and start complaining to men about the state of the sanitary bin? It's just not going to happen. But in their minds, we have no complaints. We've got a bin. Job done.
So I'd complain to another woman about the state of the bin if I was honest, and if I had to take it outside of the toilet, I'm not sure I would say anything in a public space ever.
There you go. So all of this nuance is difficult to communicate to the decision makers. That remains a challenge. The answer is for more people to ask for a better situation, for me to be able to share the Fab Little Bag reality and the story and the mission and the ethics with as many people as possible. It's the fact that because disposal is the taboo within the taboo, nobody talks about it. Even best friend groups do not know for a fact what each other is, flusher or binner.
I could never tell you, Martha. Could never tell you about any other person apart from...
Right. So that's a bit of a challenge, right? Because, I mean, one thing that people fabbers say to me a lot after they've started using Fab Little Bag is, oh my God, this is the best thing I never knew I needed. And that resonates because you never knew you needed it because of the taboo and lack of conversation. And as soon as you actually adopt it into your life, you're like, oh my God, this is a game changer. This makes everything so much better. So I feel like the challenges continue. I mean, there are umpteen challenges, by the way, like that's just one practical one. There are challenges around logistics. There are challenges around Brexit. Brexit is still playing an ugly role in businesses everywhere. I have really drawn back from selling in Europe because of the challenges. It's just horrible.
Which is a huge shame because bag is needed. I'm not kidding, everywhere. Like, we visited India in October, and truthfully, like, the army of things you have to go with is nothing short of ridiculous when you go to the toilet. I have never cleaned so many other people's toilets in my life.
Yeah.
But it's just those basic things like, well, what do you do with the sanitary towel that you're now left with? Because in those instances, sometimes you're not left with toilet rolls. You just sat there like, now what do I do exactly?
Yeah.
Inventing the wheel in your own brain.
Yeah, exactly. And that's an interesting topic of travel. We're quite keen on flushing in this country. America is even more keen on flushing. The whole out of sight, out of mind kind of mentality. Right. But in many parts of Europe, they're much better binners. Yeah. So they've grown up not being able to put anything down the toilet. And Greece comes to mind. Yeah. Nothing goes down the toilet, not even your poo paper.
That's right.
We squeaks our spirits out. But, that's the reality. And yet, all of these countries have nice hotels. And when the Brits go and stay in the nice hotels, They're not putting anything in any bin, they're flushing it down the toilet. So it's a problem everywhere to a lesser or greater extent.
What are your future plans for Fab Little Bag and your other initiatives?
Well, I would love that on the period supportive movement, the thing that instantly comes to my mind is that every coach in the country or the world coaching girls and women has their coach's bag. That's going to happen. That has to happen because it's a necessary basic requirement. So that's one absolute mission for period supported movement. Regarding the bags, generally, I mean, wherever there's a toilet, there needs to be some Fab Little Bags there in a dispenser or close by, whatever, because you're always going to need to bin stuff. And even if the bin is beautiful and perfect and delicious and lovely, you need to keep it that way. And the way to keep it that way is to put something in there that is all sealed up and cannot contaminate when it's a blood-soaked item. So I do feel like my mission is to adorn every cubicle with a beautiful Fab Little Bag dispenser and change how that feels and change the physicality of that. And I feel like I'm also, as a byproduct, saving ridiculous amounts of toilet roll.
Yeah.
Probably saving water with fewer flushings. That's
Yeah.
the word. Because when people do flush, they often flush again. Even though it goes under, they'll flush again just to make sure it's gone.
They don't want it back.
They don't want it back. They don't want it back.
They don't.
Yeah. So I think I'll also be contributing to saving water. I'll be making cleaners' lives so much better.
Oh, goodness, yeah.
So you've got to feel for the cleaners of these bins half the time.
Yeah.
So yeah, I feel like whether it's hotel rooms, so we're on North Sea oil rigs. We're in Virgin Voyager cruise ship, on all the Virgin Voyager cruise ships. We're in National Trust cottages in Wales. We're in big fancy offices in the middle of London. We're in tiny little boutique hotels on the Isle of Skye up in Scotland. We're in universities. We're in some girls' schools, not all of them. Come on, girls' schools.
I thought they would have been the first people to
Yeah.
with the program, if I was honest about it.
And suddenly we're back to procurement.
Yes.
But no, what I'm trying to say is Fab Little Bag is everywhere, which is where it needs to be, but it just needs to be everywhere in volume. So it needs to be the normal rather than, oh, there's Fab Little Bag as an exception. So that's the goal. The goal is to get Fab normalized in our lives because it is doing good, both in terms of how it makes women feel and in terms of the environment of the cubicle and the aquatic environment. Oh, and I have invented a bigger bag called Hygiene Bag, which is for male incontinence and ostomy bags and babies' nappies.
You know what?
Because
That's another taboo subject.
I'm queen of taboo, basically.
Which is brilliant thing to actually talk about too.
Yeah, give me another taboo subject. I'll take that on as well. Yeah, no, in all seriousness, male incontinence is on the massive increase right now because they're surviving bowel cancer, prostate cancer, other medical conditions, which then has that as a byproduct as well. Similarly with ostomies, actually, obviously that's not gender specific. Neither is incontinence, by the way. It's just that male incontinence is a whole nother thing because of the size of the pad/sheath that they need to wear in order to manage it.
Right.
So it just goes up a whole layer because actually a lot of women suffer from stress incontinence, mild incontinence, and the pads that they use for that, a lot of women actually just use the period pants because they don't want to, like a mental thing, they don't want to go and buy incontinence pads because that's admitting you have that challenge. So that's a challenge as well. And it shows you how strong the taboo is around this topic. Yeah. But even the female incontinence pad, they don't look particularly different. They're not some massive size. Anyway, but for men, it is different. The size is quite significant. And also for ostomy bags, you're disposing of something that contains like poo. So all of these things have odor as a real genuine challenge.
Yeah.
And so the bigger bag is similar concept, opens with one hand for ease, and you put it in, and this has like a forensic closed seal to lock in any odor and stuff. Mm-hmm. And then you can dispose with dignity, because what men don't have is any dignity around this topic at the moment. Most places, in fact, 99% of places do not have sanitary bins in the male toilets.
They might not even have a bin of any description.
What are they meant to do with
Yeah.
the urine-soaked sheath that they have to change? Research is telling us that what they do is carry around Ziploc bags or plastic bags in their rucksack. First of all, a man going to the toilet with their rucksack
Yeah.
is weird. Like, everyone's like, what's going on there? So they don't want to draw that attention. So they've got to somehow like smuggle the Ziploc bag out of their bag. They're doing the reverse, like they're smuggling bags. So they're like smuggling bags onto them, taking that to the toilet, taking it out, putting it in the bag, and then either hiding it or putting it in some other bin or carrying it around in a rucksack, praying that no one's going to smell the wee. So it's just terrible what's going on. So I really want to help that situation. We're developing right now, as we speak, a dispenser for the hygiene bags so that we can have dispensers in the male toilets.
That's amazing.
Which will really is a game changer, because even though it'll take time for them all to catch up with putting proper bins in and everything, if there's our dispensers with hygiene in the men's toilets, they can then manage it.
And other men will start talking while they're in the toilet, maybe.
Then you start breaking down the taboo, which is back to where we started about the importance of normalizing challenging topics. So yeah, and the same goes for the ostomy. People feel awkward about it, but it's something that can be relatively easily managed with a bit of thought and design to make it empowered.
Martha, thank you so much for sharing your Fab Little Bag journey with us today and your mission. It's been a pleasure to talk to you. But before we go, please let us know where we can find you online or how we can learn more about your work.
Oh, that's so kind. Thank you. I'd encourage people to go to our website, www.fablittlebag.com, where we have oodles of blogs on all kinds of topics in and around periods, endometriosis, hormones, sports, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, please go there and have a rummage around and kind of educate yourself on whichever topic you fancy. You'll also there be able to sign up as either a person, an individual, and get your own Fab Little Bags. And if you're a company or a sports club or a hotel or a school, you can sign up as one of those and get your relevant products that are relevant for you there. So it's both products and education rolled into on the website. Professionally, just tap me up on LinkedIn. I'll say hello and be helpful if I can. So yeah, that's kind of it really. In terms of if you're a person, then you can also purchase Fab Little Bags through Ocado or Amazon, if that's easier.
I encourage everyone listening to check that out, and the links will be in the show notes too. Do follow the Trailblaze Hers on Instagram, LinkedIn, or visit thetrailblazehers.com to stay updated on future episodes and behind the scenes content. Once again, I'm Disha Solanki with Martha Silcott, founder of Fab Little Bag, and you've been listening to the Trailblazers. Thank you for listening.